Serious, sailors, seamen and overall people who spend a vast amount of time in the ocean. Have you ever witnessed something you would catalog as supernatural or unusual? What was it like? Oh sure. Lots of auditory hallucinations. You are all alone in the middle of the ocean, and you hear your name being called all the time. Or you're down below, and hear someone running on the deck. Do you get any sort of training or warning like look, you'll eventually hear somebody calling your name, or do you just get used to that sort of stuff? My dad's done some trips into the Atlantic single-handed, he's reported many hallucinations. Mostly auditory, like hearing people call his name etc., but more scarily once he thought he saw a container ship about to run him down. You can't really sleep properly for the first few days because of all the coastal fishing boats, so it was probably just down to sleep deprivation. Alone in a small boat on the Atlantic. That's gonna be a huge no thank you for me. If it's a really wide and really long boat with great Wi-Fi, I'd love it. Nah. I have no issues diving alone at night, but sitting alone in a boat with 4 km of dark cold water below me. Hell no. The closest to supernatural, or at least something I can't explain, happened halfway between Cornwall and the Scillies. We were sailing in a fresh breeze, 5 to 6 feet swells maybe. That's perfectly fine sailing weather, but the boat will rock and there will be quite a bit of noise from the wind, the sails and waves. So we sail happy along when suddenly the sea is perfectly flat and everything is quiet, like somebody turned the sound off. I look around and the water is pitch dark. It only lasted for a minute and then everything was back to normal, but I got a really eerie feeling. I have a theory. I think you sailed over a large patch of spilled oil. Oil stops waves half serious, but this would explain the ocean's color, and in large enough quantity, the oil could suppress the swell. I was a sailor in the Navy. While I was on lookout duty on the bridge at night, a dude walked and stood beside me, breathing hard. I was looking out at sea and I was blocking the stairs going down, so I turned around to whisper sorry, and what do you know, Therese, no one. I was tired, so I chalked this up to hallucination, but it felt real. Edit, we were in the South China Sea. Edit, pretty neat to see other Army Navy folks with similar, if not the same exact experience. How many hours were you on duty that night? I swear I had experiences like that even in the barracks on land from sleep deprivation. We were 6 hours on and 6 hours off, and we were a few days in. That's why I'm leaning more on fatigue-induced hallucination than the paranormal. Staring out of binoculars for that long can give you a nice massive headache, and chances are I would say that's probably what it is. When I'm real tired, I always hear things that freak me out only to realize it's nothing. That's usually my cue for going to bed. Otherwise I wake up sweating. One of the most magical nights I ever had was when I was serving in an NZ Navy warship, and we were homeward bound after a long and unpredictable deployment. I was dealing with a bout of insomnia, and decided to go down aft for a breath of fresh air. It was a very dark, moonless night, and as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I really began to appreciate the phosphorescence glowing in our wake, bright green against the dark water. Then I looked closer, to see a pod of dolphins playing in the phosphorescence, leaving their own bright glowing trails as they streaked through the water. Now, I knew what it was, and what caused it, but it was something that I imagine would have appeared quite mystical to sailors back in the past. It was stunning though. I sat and watched them for about an hour. Such a vivid memory. Seeing bioluminescent bacteria is such a cool experience. I had the pleasure of seeing it once on the coast of Cape Cod in the summer. All the waves were crashing with this blue glow along the wave pattern. Really a surreal feeling. I was standing in the hangar bay waiting for morning muster at dawn somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Looking out at the ocean, I was intrigued by how smooth as glass the water was reflecting the clouds in the sky. Then the most beautiful, confusing, mesmerizing, and terrifying thing I ever saw happened. The water, for a moment, was so smooth that the horizon disappeared from view. The water was so smooth and reflective that it was impossible to tell where the water ended and the sky began. I honestly got dizzy knowing I was in the middle of the ocean floating on water, but my eyes were trying to convince me the ship was floating on nothing. Then the water started slightly rippling and the horizon was visible again. Every morning at sea after that I looked at the horizon hoping it would happen again, but it never did. I've never found out what caused this scientifically. The closest thing I could ever find was it was some sort of variant of the Fata Morgana mirage. I don't think I will ever see anything as beautiful in my life ever again. Words fall extremely short at describing the feeling in that moment. When I was roving patrol on a submarine, I always thought I saw someone walking parallel to me down missile compartment upper level. If I was on the port side, then I saw them on the starboard side and vice versa. I always chalked it up to pipes and valves creating weird shadows. Additionally, it felt heavy on that level, like there was some sort of presence, the feeling you get when someone's watching you. I never told anyone. Then one day, a few weeks into patrol, one of the other rovers asked me if it felt weird up there. He specifically said that he saw someone up there too, just like I had. We shared stories and then talked to the third rover, and he said I only go up there to do my rounds every hour, then get the duck out of that haunted level. Low frequency sounds can cause that kind of eerie feeling. You can't hear it, but you can feel something is off, but you can't exactly determine what it is. I imagine a submarine's engine is running most of the time and being sound dampened, it probably doesn't make a lot of sound in the audible spectrum. I wouldn't be surprised if low frequency sound, in an otherwise quiet environment, was the cause of that feeling. Reminds me of an experiment someone, forgot the name, where he blasted himself, or a subject, sounds at the resonant frequency of the eyeballs. He saw blobs of darkness or something like that. Edit, it's Vic Tandy. I think I might have gotten some details wrong. Here's more info. https://science.howstuffworks.com Science vs. Myth Extrasensory Perception Infrasound Paranormal Activity. htm #text infrasound %20 refers %20 to %20 low frequency, responsible %20 for %20 perceived %20 hauntings. St. Elmo's Fire, in the Coral Sea. Extremely unsettling and beautiful. I've seen St. Elmo's Fire as well. During a storm in the Atlantic, bursting out of just above our mast, I was in a 40-feet sailboat, and am definitely not a 400-year-old sailor from the age of sail. It was pretty cool, and I actually thought it was lightning striking our ship at first, but it wasn't bright enough damaging. Edit, my clarifying comment that I am not a ghost sailor has a lot of people asking questions already answered by my comment. Fog. I don't care what anyone says, there is something in that fog. #X200B, edit, not a joke. A dead calm with thick fog is creepy and will drive you to wild hallucinations. I imagine it's not dissimilar to a sensory deprivation chamber. I have a story about almost getting run down by an 800-feet Great Lakes freighter in a thick fog bank. We were on a 35-feet racing sailboat. Couldn't see the bow from the cockpit, fog was so bad. A crew member said I hear a bow wake, and moments later, a wall of steel appeared out of the fog. We were sailing right into the side of it. We could have touched it with a boat pole. That was the most scared I've ever been on the water. I crewed on a tall ship, and we were anchored with a bunch of others in a harbor. We had to take shifts at night because it was an old boat and did weird things. I was on shift in the little steering cabin when I heard someone running around the deck. I thought it was one of the other crew, so I poked my head out and told them to knock it off. They kept running and I was afraid they'd slip, so I followed them. We went around the whole ship twice before I caught up with a shapeless shadow which stopped and flew directly up into the air. Convinced it was a prank, I walked back to the end of the boat when I saw we had drifted on anchor and were almost under the bow of a much larger ship. I called the rest of the crew and we sorted it out. But I might not have noticed until too late if it weren't for the weird shadow. That's a clawbotterman. Had to look this up for anyone too lazy. It's a water kobold that is helpful to sailors and has musical talents. Now look up kobold. Like a German gremlin goblin. I read a story here once where someone had family who sailed around the world. One day in the North Atlantic, their sailboat was going over some gigantic swells. They didn't have brakes at the top, so it was safe, but the boat was rising and falling way beyond the neutral. At the bottom of a trough, their uncle looked up to see the sun behind a wave and the silhouette of a whale inside, above him. Like this, but with whales? Petapixel.com 201902225. This photo shows sharks inside a wave. A surfer's greatest nightmare. Not a surfer, still greatest nightmare. It was about 3 a.m. during my watch on an ocean passage. I was sleep deprived and fatigued. The sailing yacht was silhouetted against the moon glistening on the water. Suddenly a dolphin jumped from the water below the boom, broad reach, and splashed back in. Then again. Then again. Then again for the next 3 hours, with the exact position and sound over and over and over. I felt like I was descending into madness because I couldn't stop the apparent delusion. I'm still not sure if there ever was a dolphin, or if it just happened once and was then stuck in some sort of mental loop. The games they play can really throw us on a loop. I was on a cruise in Alaska and dolphins seem to spend most of their time playing games that make them laugh, like they are cracking jokes for hours on end. Man has always assumed that he is more intelligent than dolphins because he has achieved so much: the wheel, New York, wars and so on, while all the dolphins had ever done was muck about in the water having a good time. But, conversely, the dolphins had always believed that they were far more intelligent than man, for precisely the same reasons. Douglas Adams.